Happy holidays, and for this very Merry Christmas, I wanted to be sure to get at least one video out, so I thought we could look at some MSNBC analysts breaking down the economic impacts we can expect from Trump's tariffs, his gift to all of us this season, so to speak, and what it might spell for him and the party politically, so let's hop right in.
I think if prices stay, roughly the same, people that voted for Donald Trump, that like Donald Trump will, either believe that they've gone down or talk about, oh, no, it's not that bad. Things are actually better. But, if there is egregious increases in the prices of things, for those folks who maybe voted for Biden in 2020 and then went and voted for Trump in 2024, it is going to be a harder sell to believe that he's doing a good job.
Now, I do think there are those who exist in the middle that aren't really politically invested, who will be swayed just by Trump's failure to lower prices, as his tariffs ultimately will raise them if he does implement them. I mean, the same way I'm sure plenty of these same people were swayed from Trump to Biden in 2020, and then from Biden, Harris, whoever, to Trump in 2024, as COVID just kind of hindered that economic vibe in which most of these people vote on, that would have costed any party who was in power in either of those elections, and ultimately did. But for Trump's cult, the sad reality is they'll never admit anything. They won't concede any of this. They'll start contextualizing the economy, we'll see it soon in just a few weeks, as good. The second Trump takes office, despite claiming it's failing under Biden, they'll tout numbers of success before Trump passes any legislation, not even realizing that those numbers then would still be in effect from Biden. If prices stay the same throughout his presidency, they'll pretend it's really good at the end. Oh, look, prices are outpacing inflation, even though they are now and they're still a problem. And if prices go up, they can always cop out by saying, well, it's the effects of Biden's presidency carrying over. One term isn't enough and there's nothing Trump could do and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it'll all be pretty annoying.
There is some uncertainty, and you raised that in the package, that he can't control a lot of these macro issues. The most that he has is the rhetoric, but at some point that rhetoric is going to grow very, very tired. And I'll just say this very quickly. During the Trump presidency, he spoke more about what Haitians eat than the price of eggs. So if you don't get to that kind of underlying economic issue that really does bolster the lives of most Americans, they're going to come back to him and say, well, what have you done for us lately?
He's spot on here. What we know is the cult of people who will vote on these fringe culture issues, transing the kids, immigrants stealing jobs, whatever it may be, they're relatively small. They don't make up the majority. And Trump has to pull from the middle as well to win, something he did this election successfully, largely more because of the effects of COVID would have caused any incumbent party to lose this group. And Trump offered rhetoric, at least in terms of playing to their anger on that and pointing it towards Democrats, but he didn't offer much solutions in terms of, or rhetoric in terms of solutions. And now, as he's already walking back that he probably won't be able to lower grocery prices, and it becomes obvious to the American people that he truly has no plan to lower prices at all, to raise wages at all, that mass deportations are going to be very expensive, tariffs won't lower prices. If anything, these two things will have the opposite effects of this. He'll start to massively bleed off this support of those same people that have been flip-flopping since 2020, where, as I always stress, if Democrats come in with the economically populist message that is at the core of their base, at the heart of people like AOC, the Squad, the people who should be representing the party moving forward, pushing an economically populist message like livable minimum wage, healthcare for all, free education, student loan debt forgiveness, expanded childcare, they can come in and swoop this constituency up for good. And that'll be pretty easy, as Republicans will never be the party that'll offer these solutions.
What are they saying about the outlook for inflation and for immigration? This past weekend, incoming President Trump once again reiterated his promise of mass deportation for illegal immigrants. How realistic is that goal? And is anybody kind of putting together how much it could cost? The Immigration Council now says deporting 1 million immigrants a year would cost about $88 billion. Are voters tying these issues together, or are they still kind of focus on the talking points of the election?
I think a lot of the focus still remains on the talking points of the election, and for his supporters, of course, as we talked about, sort of that grace period that, he's figuring it out and he's going to get it done. But the reality is that Trump on the campaign trail was not talking, of course, about what the cost of this mass deportation is. And I think the reality is that he played on certain nuances within working class Americans, within Latinos specifically.
What he played on was a psychological conundrum that capitalism itself creates, where you feel like you have to be selfish selfish to survive. Like it's me or them, because in a lot of times it is when money's running low, and that's a situation capitalism creates, right? And one way to bolster yourself up out of this is to push others down, which isn't true. If you do this, you just end up in the same place. And I mean, Trump played on this though by constantly, well, first by invoking their anger at not making enough money, struggling to find a good job, groceries being expensive, and pointed it at immigrants as if it was their fault, conveniently directing the attention away from billionaires that are hoarding the money that could be used to create jobs, refusing to pay more wages at their corporations despite seeing record profits, or raising grocery prices at these corporations to prey on the feelings of the pandemic because they can just blame inflation, because it can't be their fault. It has to be the other human beings in the exact same boat as you, but they're brown and don't speak English. So, maybe if we demonize them, your life will get better, which on a campaign trail might work. Sure, I guess like emotions are a powerful motivator, but unfortunately for Trump and Republicans, most people aren't stupid, right? Plenty of his base are, but that part of the cult isn't enough to win an election. Plenty aren't as well, and that's the issue. They're going to see how costly this immigration plan is. $1 trillion. They'll remember how Republicans said Democrats were communists for wanting to spend $1 trillion, and how they were just wasting money, and how the government is corrupt and doesn't need to spend this much money. And then they'll see how the effects of this $1 trillion plan will benefit them none. Jobs will be no more vacant. Wages will be no more higher. If anything, Medicare and Social Security will be less funded. Prices will be no more lower. Crime will see no significant change. And their taxes, though, however, will go up to fund this $1 trillion plan. And these people will realize that they've been duped. And I just hope that the Democrats are there with the messaging to catch them when this inevitably happens.